I'm going to take you guys through a part 1 on how I created this cake that was inspired by PineFlour, and feel free to do a similar style in different colors. This was an experimental cake that I wanted to do to test out some different color palettes, and it was made out of just leftover frozen cakes I had in my freezer. My buttercream was not cooperating because I was making it in a hurry, which you should never do with buttercream. If there's anything you can learn about buttercream, it's just please make sure your butter is at the right temperature and take your time beating it to get a nice smooth consistency. I wound up warming mine up in the microwave just to get it more smooth and to whip all the air bubbles out for the final coating. But if you make it right, you shouldn't have to do that. Some people like to warm theirs up anyways just to have an easier time with their base coat. So this is the color I started out with, but I wanted more gray hints in it, so I ended up adding stone and ash as well from Americolor. I'm trying to gradually make a slow switch though over to Color Mill, as it is a healthier alternative to food coloring. So as you can see, I'm now smoothing it out with this cake spatula on top, and then I just kind of smear it around. Most people will actually put their frosting in a piping bag and then kind of just drag it all around the cake up to the top. It can just make it easier to make your passes with your bench scraper, especially if you're a beginner. And I myself am still learning. I do not count myself a professional at this by any means. I have learned just by watching other people online, so I do not have any professional training with this. So do just keep that in mind while you're taking anything from this video. So I use this a Teco or a Tiso, I don't know how to pronounce it, 124K tip for those ruffles. Then the next piping tip I used was the 102 for this next part, this band that goes over the ruffles. Make sure you're holding it with the narrow end of the piping tip facing downward. Then I moved into using the Wilton 16 for the shell bordering. For this, you're going to just squeeze and then release as you're coming off of your shell border. Next up, I did my least favorite thing to do on a cake ever, which is drop strings, and I used a Wilton 4. I messed up a million times. I think my frosting was also just too soft, but look at how many times I had to start over. Next, I used this tip. It's labeled 6, but I'm not sure who the brand is from. I know I got it off of Amazon though, and I used this to create these little dots underneath the drop strings. And then I hand placed, which I believe is the smallest size sugar pearl in between the drop strings and those dots, and then went ahead and went back to that first 124K tip for the top ruffles. I just did a double layer of ruffles on the top there. I then went back to another shell tip, which is again, not sure the brand, but it's labeled 20, and same technique here, squeeze and then release to get these little shells on the top. And for the roses, I used a Wilton 104 tip, but I also used a combination of the other 2 petal tips for the petals along the side of the cake. I'm not going to go over how I made the roses because they are literally like my worst nightmare. That's why I put them on so many cakes, because I keep trying to practice them and I make a mess every single time I make them. But I will make another video when I feel like I am qualified to show you how I make them. And this video also is just super long, so I don't want to make it any longer. But yeah, that pretty much sums up everything. I threw in what I used for the rosettes and those little side details, but that's pretty much it. This cake is obviously a very particular design, so may not be everyone's cup of tea, but I absolutely love this style. If you plan on trying it, make sure you shout out PineFlour because this is in light of her creations. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.